It is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Verlaque as the Director for the Center of Complex Coronary Interventions at Minneapolis Heart Institute and the Chairman of the Center for Coronary Artery Disease at the Minneapolis Heart Foundation. Today, we'll be discussing his unique JACC Interventions article reporting the performance of ChatGPT on the ACC SCAI Interventional Cardiology Certification exam. Dr. Verlaque, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Well, it's a pleasure. No, thanks so much for having me.
First, can you give us a background about how you and the team came up with this idea and the reason you thought of this very unique article?
Yeah, well, thanks. I need to give the credit to Mikhail Alexander. So she's the first author. She's actually the one who did the work, and she has a lot of interest into burnout and quality of life for the physicians, but also how can we get new technologies to help with the stresses inherent into interventional and general cardiology practice. And then we have all these weekly meetings, we discuss things, and more and more it became apparent that there is a lot of possibility into those devices of the new chatbots and ChatGPT and the newer ones coming out to potentially give answers and help with that. And also I need to acknowledge Arun Maitani, who's also has been working on this for a while. So this started more of a conversation. And then we realized, yeah, this is something that can be done fairly easily. So they did take the questions, they did put them in. It took some time to conceptualize. It's a little broad. Okay, which questions do you take? How do you put them in the ChatGPT? There's this question of justification versus not justification, which, as you probably saw, if you just ask for justification, ChatGPT did much better than if you didn't, which is very similar to humans, I think. If you ask someone to give an answer but explain why it is, then you're more likely to get something meaningful. So it started as a attempt to kind of understand the role of these new systems into daily practice. And then it has expanded into something that can help with day-to-day stresses and helping us make decisions.
Fascinating. And how did you kind of utilize, or how did you, what are the methods that you use to assess the ChatGPT performance?
So we decided to use the ACC CATSAP. That's a fairly well-established tool for practicing for the interventional boards. I just took my interventional boards again last month. So it's a very common way to prepare. And also the other thing that is nice about it is that it does have a registry of what are the answers of the current people, usually fellows, who are taking these questions and how did they answer. So it gives you a benchmark of how accurate, how good are the current takers of the exam when they take that CATSAP exam. So then we had something to compare with, and although ChatGPT didn't reach that 82% or so, which was the correct answers that the takers took, but still it was 76. I mean, so it was pretty good, pretty close to what the current interventional fellows achieved in the exams.
Nice. And what did you guys, found out, in general, the results for the, because I know you guys did the retesting with the ChatGPT, and just kind of like a brief summary of the results.
No, absolutely. So out of the questions, there were 60 questions from CATSAP, and the ChatGPT got correct. If you ask for justification, it got correct 76% of those. So that's pretty close to the 82%. That is what was found, by the intervention of the people who took the exam. So the actual people were a little bit better, but not that much more than the ChatGPT. But if you did not ask for justification, then the correct percent was about 62%. So justification gives much better results than if you don't ask for justification. If you had videos, it didn't do well because that's not a feature that ChatGPT analyzes right now. But with images, it was pretty good. And then what was fascinating to me is that, and this is actually something I didn't expect and surprising to a way, is that if you ask the same questions, but this happened a little later, 2 weeks later to be exact, the score dropped from 77% or so to 65%. So it's kind of funny. You would think someone asked a question, you'd be consistent. but the
Yeah.
consistency wasn't there. And that's something that's fascinating. I know it's been shown in other similar studies that were done in the past in other questions, but it raises some concerns about how accurate and reliable it is. If it gives you a different answer every time, this is something of concern.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is fascinating. And I think that's the key message is maybe these things are not as reliable as we initially think they are. But thank you again, Dr. Verlakis, for joining us today. It's a fascinating, question and a very interesting article. And we invite everyone to go over the article. It'll be published in this issue for JACC Interventions. Thank you again, Dr. Verlakis.
It's a pleasure. Thanks so much.